love a good story. I've always loved good stories. Ever since I was a little girl, I loved all those fairy tale stories with those wonderful characters and the fabulous endings. And so I started writing a story at a very early age, my life story. And the title of my life story was Good Little Girl. The challenge with a title like that is it meant that you had to have high moral standards. You had to have great values, follow all the rules, pay attention to the teachers and all the authority figures. It meant you walked the straight and narrow road. And I lived my life that way for a very long time, until my daughters were in middle school. Our lives were fun and chaotic and wild. You see, my husband and I had begun a church. We started with 7 members, and by the time our daughters were in middle school, we had over 3,000 members. In that congregation that was growing and vital, I found my jam. I was in the space where life was exciting. I was using my gifts, and I worked for God. Who more could you ask to work for? One particular morning, when I was making breakfast, and I tried to make breakfast special because our lives were so busy, it was probably the only meal we were going to eat together. And so my daughter can tell you that they woke up to sparkling champagne, apple cider, heart-shaped strawberries, and candlelight for breakfast because I wanted to be a good mother and a good wife and a good pastor and a good sister and a good friend and a good. You see, being a good little girl had become my identity. It had become the thing that made Juanita, Juanita. And so I did everything I could to live into being a good girl, even as a grown-ass woman. One particular morning, I prepared breakfast, and I finished eating first so that I could run and go finish my makeup. My husband said, "Baby, would you like me to take the girls to school?" I said, "Sure, that'd be great. Then I can put my makeup on in the bathroom instead of the rearview mirror." I know I'm not the only one. And so I kissed them and hugged them goodbye. They ran out the door. And then I went to the bathroom to finish the task at hand. And as I stood there applying my mascara ever so perfectly, I started to feel sick. I didn't quite know what was happening. It was almost as though everything in me was going to come out. All of a sudden, I realized that maybe it was just that I had moved around too fast. It kind of felt like the flu, but not really. It was just this overwhelming sense of something wasn't happening right, and I didn't quite know what that was. So I picked up the phone, I called our secretary at the church, and I said, "Look, I'm not feeling well. Maybe I've just been moving around too fast. So would you reschedule my morning appointments, and I'll come in around noon. Surely if I lay down, I'll feel better, and I can come back into the office." I hung up the phone, and I got ready to get in the bed to lay down, and I saw myself almost like an out-of-body experience. Pick up the phone, hit redial, and I called and I said, "I'm really not feeling well. I don't know when I'm coming back. I don't know if I'm coming back. I'm going to take a sabbatical or a medical leave or something." And I hung up the phone. And I got in bed and proceeded to have what my grandmother would have called a nervous breakdown. Now, my psychiatrist says there's no such thing as a nervous breakdown in the DSM-4. I said, "Oh, really?" Slept 18 to 20 hours a day for months. I was exhausted. You see, I had lived out all I could live out as a good little girl. And my life at that point, felt over. I told my husband, I'm going to quit. I can't go back. It would be months and months of not being able to get out of bed, of having this experience of feeling like I was falling down a tunnel every single day. And all I kept thinking was, couldn't I grab onto something inside of this dark pit so that I could hold on and wouldn't hit the bottom? One of the things I've learned is that so often when we get a diagnosis, a devastating divorce, a dream that doesn't work out, whenever despair sets in, so often we're busy running from it in hopes that we can outrun that darkness, that disappointment, that devastating experience. And what depression taught me was to stop, turn around, and ask, why are you here? What are you here to teach me? And my recovery began when I recognized that the thing that I had feared the most was my teacher. There are two things that I substantially learned from this experience, and I want to share them with you. You see, what I've come to recognize is that all of our lives are like a window pane. There's the opportunity to look out from the inside, and then there are those who are looking at us from the outside in. There are 4 questions, and I use the model called Johari's window. These 4 questions substantially changed my approach to the diagnosis. Because you see, I recognized that it was more about the dark night of my soul. It wasn't just a medical description in the DSM-4. The first question that I invite us to ask is, who am I? Who am I besides the roles that I fulfill and the titles that I take on? Who am I really? The second question, what do I need? You see, like many of you, I have worked for pats on the back, for affirmation, for people to say, oh, what a good girl are you, Juanita, at 58. And nobody's ever said to me, what do you really need? Depression invited me to ask myself the real life questions. The third question, what do I want? I remember laying in my bed, not able to get up, trying to figure out how to remember to go to the bathroom. Laying in my bed for so long and smelling this horrible stench and wondering where it was coming from, only to recognize that it was me, because I hadn't bathed in weeks. And how my husband could continually lay in bed next to me is nothing more than pure love. What do I want? The third question is, what keeps me alive at my core? I had absolutely no idea. I could not answer any of these 4 questions. But the power came in that not being able to get out of bed isolated me to silence and solitude and the capacity for reflection. You see, so often in our culture and many others, men are given the power to go on a quest. Women are given the opportunity to be sick, mentally, emotionally, or physically. But I took it for all it was worth. While I laid in that bed, I reflected on what did I really need? What did I really want? And what really kept me alive at my core? Now let me share with you Johari's window and what it invites us to look at. The me I see. You see, part of my recovery meant paying attention to the me that I saw. Now, oftentimes, the me that I see is the facade me. It's the me that, has her panty girdle on. Makeup just right, because Kim Roxy did the brows. The me I see, the one I project to you. But behind all of that projection, there's a mask of stuff I don't want you to see. The second aspect of inviting myself to rewrite a different story than the good little girl one that had crashed was the invitation to pay attention to the me that I don't want you to see. And to reflect on what were the qualities about myself that I really didn't want people to see. I didn't want them to know I was judgmental. See, if you're a good little girl, somebody's a bad little girl. And most good little girls are going to let the bad little girls know they bad little girls. So I had work to do. The me others see. Oh, I fantasized about the me others see. The effective mother. I was the volunteer of the Girl Scouts for my girls' Daisy Troop until they dropped out. At one point, some girl dropped out of, tried to open the door on a minivan while they were going on a trip. They said, Mama, we can't work with this group. And so I totally understood. But I was there. I tried to be the person that other people could depend on. At what cost? Then lastly, this is the place where I found the most significant transformation in my life. It was the place when I began to wonder, because I didn't know. That place that sometimes madness takes you to, or the majesty of an awakening can take you to. The place where you get to know the divine you, the you without labels and titles, the I am that doesn't have to strive for anything, doesn't have to work hard to get there. But the I am who I call God, the me only God sees, the me that was created when my mom and dad got together and danced. That me without a false narrative. That me that was the divine mystery, life living in me. You see, it was in this place that I realized what it meant to learn to be me. Why is that so difficult? Because no one really asks us to stop and take the time to reevaluate the story we've been telling ourselves. So I thought I would. I'm inviting you. Reevaluate the story you've been telling yourself about you. Why? Because you just might find out that you are bold and you're brilliant, and that, my friends, is enough. Thank you.